Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear,
business consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.
Welcome. I'm Jay Shear with Jay Shear Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the results and success they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Tom Peters said, all of us need to understand the importance of branding. We are CEOs of our own companies, Me Inc. To be in business today, our most important job is to be head marketer for the brand called you. Well, on today's episode, we talk about personal branding, capturing attention, and standing out in today's crowded digital space. Our guest is a media brand advisor, personal brand strategist, content coach, and podcaster who for over 25 years has been creating, elevating, and amplifying personal brands. He's worked with well-known celebrities like Mandy Moore, Ashton Kutcher, Jessica Simpson, and Rob Lowe, and corporate brands such as Macy's, Samsung, Nikon, and Lady Foot Locker. Please welcome the man who is both an innovator and a positive disruptor, Vinnie Potestivo. Vinnie, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, man. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for this. Your voice is so captivating. I'm like leaned in. Yes.
You are so kind. Thank you. And I'm truly grateful for you being here today. And I'm very excited about this conversation. You and I have not had an opportunity to actually meet virtually or face-to-face yet, although we will be here very soon. But I will share this with you. Researching you and consuming your content as I was doing my due diligence and researching you as best as I could really has been it's been an enlightening experience for me. And there's so many areas that we could go in this conversation. So let's kick it off. I thought a really good starting point would be for us to wind the film back a bit. And let's go back to when you first realized that the direction that you have gone with your career was something that you wanted to do. And if you, while you're sharing that with us, if you could also point to maybe some sort of catalyst or the impetus that gave you the push to move in this direction.
Yeah, cool. I graduated college in 98, 99. So like a lot of people in that age bracket, Y2K, Euro, like finance was like a huge in technology were sort of like the two areas that, seemed to have the most promise for opportunity and employment. And I went to school studying computer science, and I went to school studying the business of theater. I thought I might maybe run a production company, or I might do something sort of on Broadway. I'm from New York, so I knew I kind of always wanted to stay here. But for the 2 years or maybe a year and a half between college and when I ended up starting the talent development department at MTV, where we launched it, I would say I was in this in-between space of technology and talent, where I was able to create websites and SQL and databasing. So that meant that I can cast projects and I can organize people's information in a unique way that allowed me to access them. I was being asked to, on Hannity and Combs, I was being asked to fly the country and pick people in the audience to ask questions from the audience, which was a little bit out of my normal area of expertise. And I had to tap into this empathetic muscle that gave me the space to say, I have no clue what that question means, but also I understand why that question should be asked. And it felt like it could be additive to the conversation. And in a weird way, I was forced to figure out what questions should be asked and what questions shouldn't, just really based on the energy, the feeling of it. And I didn't realize this then, but that's like some of the earliest forms of me doing, unscripted casting. And because of my experience on Hannity and Combs, I was hired by MTV to cast Choose or Lose for the 2000 elections, and found Gideon Yago and ended up bringing in Sushin Pak to the network. And I ultimately stayed for 10 years.
Wow.
But it was that ability to organize information with people that I didn't know as I was meeting them actively, and still successfully be able to connect them to opportunities just because I was organized. And in 1999, in actually September 10th, in 9999, because of the VMAs, I'll never forget that actually, was like my first week at MTV. And my boss, Rod Asa, he started the talent and series development department, and it was the two of us, and we were going to cast VJs, and we did. I cast the VJs on TRL and the news correspondents and on all the MTV properties. And those talent relationships turned into creative conversations, and those conversations turned into projects, and then pilots, and an opportunity. And from that department came Osbournes and Newlyweds and Punk'd, and like some like dozens of reality programming that really helped these artists achieve a level of stardom, of reach that they hadn't yet achieved. And I loved that. I can work with super talented people in this unique capacity that I had by helping them just be comfortably themselves. For 10 years, I did that at MTV, learning how to launch talent brands. And then I started my agency in 2007 and have spent the last 15 years creating small businesses and founder-led brands, and converting that same skill set of production, audience empathy, timing, finding ways to present information in a way that's elevated and unexpected even. I love that I was given the space to do that.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing. You packed a lot of information in the words that you used, and I want to dig a little deeper on a couple of areas, because you brought up some key words that just really stuck in my mind. Obviously, one being empathy, and the fact that you're able to help someone pull the greatness out of them, that you're able to help them develop the talent, the skill sets, whatever that happens to be, because in many cases it's already within us. But having someone who can identify that, and then who can help us cultivate and be able to pull that out is a pretty remarkable gift. So I want to talk about that, but I want to go back to something, because as I was researching you, one of the things that I found that I thought was really interesting was that when you were in college, I believe it was in your senior year, you started a business at that point, and which helped you in the space that you operate in today. Speak to that for a moment. What was the impetus for starting that business, and what happened with it?
That's so funny you say. I got goosebumps. I learned how to build databases, and I suddenly felt comfortable knowing that if I met a tremendous amount of people, and this is weird to say this, but this is before there were address books on our computers. If you had a cell phone, maybe you were allowed to store up to 99 numbers in it back in the day. So reaching people and retaining their information was next to impossible. That's where the yellow pages came from. And I spent hundreds of hours in the computer center, SQL and databasing and HTML and learning JavaScript and physically running landlines. And in the computer center, I learned is where I learned how to structure databases and understand how to retain information and then still keep it active, keep communicating with them. So much so that I ended up paying for 2 years of college, and over one summer, my first job out of school was at Credit Suisse First Boston. I was a database programmer for Y2K and the Euro compliancy, and I paid for 2 years of college in one summer because you're working at a bank. It took me 8 years at MTV to pay off the last the last 2 years, but I was because you get paid in events and in social in social causes and stuff like that. So I started a casting company I thought it would be a brilliant idea. I'll start a casting company because I want to be casting people. I saw in backstage that you can pay $20 and you take out an advertisement. And then I figured we'll see what happens. And I got like maybe 1,500 headshots sent to my school. I put my school address, Vinnie Potestivo Entertainment, One Campus Road, Staten Island, New York, 10301. Basically, Wagner College is, my dorm room. And you're not allowed to start a business on campus. This is one of those like weird rules that usually only comes up in like the LinkedIn story, the MySpace story, or like you hear about these businesses being created. It was like a real Miracle on 34th Street moment for me. Like I go to the mailroom, there's bins of 8x10, I've never seen. Like in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is my fan mail. But suddenly I had thousands, hundreds of people's information that I now had access to. I started a newsletter. I started a blog. I started connecting with them. I literally ran into a casting director at MTV. I asked him the one thing that I don't think anyone ever did, which was, how can I help you? And then I gave him 3 ways that I would like to help him. I can bring people to your very Busta Christmas special. I can bring people back to TRL and they can sit in the audience or, whatever you're looking for. And he was also casting Whitney Houston's It's Not Right, But It's Okay video. So I was like, I know people who would love to be, that sounds like that's a job. So I was so happy to make that connection. And in those 2 years, I think is where I really figured out that, because there's this part of my story that I sort of stopped saying, but there's this part of my story right before college where I was told that I wasn't talented. And that charged me to go get a creative scholarship at a liberal arts college. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not talented. I'll show you that, And I think that I'm uniquely talented. I'm not the best singer. I'm certainly not the best dancer. I'm not the best actor, but I get on stage. I hold this, I do what I'm supposed to, and I'm usually the funny guy, and I sort of know my role. And that idea of being told I wasn't creative comes up now because 20 years ago, when I started in this industry, there were maybe 100,000 TV producers or content producers, film, maybe under 1 million creatives worldwide professionally. And now there are hundreds of millions of them every single year just because of the iPhone. So the fact that everyone speaks my language now is so cool. And the fact that we understand video streaming and inline streaming and all that. I'm like, yes, now we can build. Now we can connect. And
I love that. I think, Vinnie, and I apologize for interrupting you, but I want to make sure that we are highlighting what you just explained to us as you were talking about this business that you created in college, because you understood at an early age the power of relationships, the power of connections. Now, I don't know, and I would have to ask this question to you. Did you have a roadmap for all of this? Or was this...
I valued relationships and I valued contacts because I had none. So I knew that's what I needed, but I know I didn't have that. All I really knew was how to build websites. So by the way, I helped MTV.com build pages, and I was always coming up with organizational structure, and they were always reminding me to stay in my lane. And I'm like, yeah, but why can't we have MTV.com/casting where people can come and like look for all the casting opportunities that are on the network? Like some of these things that are just, they seem so evident, right? But I was lucky to land at MTV in a business that believed in youth culture and enabled the youth 20-year-olds to achieve that. And I was very lucky to have won over the respect of the people that I did early in my career to get, to my position. The rest of it was hard work, a lot of hard work. Actually, I say lucky, but ironically, Wannabe a VJ was happening in the studio when I was like maybe in a casting assistant back in the day, and I wasn't yet full-time at the network. And the VJ coordinator went to my college, my high school, and I'm from Staten Island. She went to Tottenville High School. And I said, oh, I'll bring my yearbook in. You'll see my yearbook and you'll see how it looks. And her boss, who ended up being my boss, a guy named Rod Asa, who's currently the head of unscripted at NBC, spent hours in her office thumbing through this guy, Vinnie Potestivo's high school yearbook. And the coolest part about it, because it's so Staten Island, it's thick. And in my class, there was 1,500 people. The amount of vowels in our book is just, it's so awesome. The Irish, Italian, tiny little bubble that lives in Staten Island. And you come to the real world in Manhattan and you're like, what? But he read all of my friends' testimonial. All those little fun things that your girlfriends and your friends say to you your senior year in your book. He read all that stuff. So I always thought that was at a point in time, 99, 2000, where there's no social proof. There's no LinkedIn, MySpace. You have no clue what my real, energy vibe looks like and what people really, I'm so grateful of that moment. I always think it was the yearbook that allowed him to see that I was this geek computer science guy who I was an intern at Staten Island Community Access Channel. I was a engineer. I was a data engineer. I was like a control room engineer. I learned how to move tapes and I learned how to wire VCRs together and I can record that way. And it was those technical skill sets that let me, I think, my boss didn't need help in casting. He's genius. He's brilliant. The amount of people he's brought to television is unreal. So my resume is in the shadow of his. A lot of the names we'll even talk about here. But he generously brought me in on all of those projects. We created something really unique at MTV, and to be an active listener, to be an active developer, and to slowly but quickly earn the trust of talented artists who have not an ego to satiate, but a message to get out there. I loved where I landed and where I ended up being at MTV. And I look back now and I can say, I love what I did. I made mistakes along the way, like we all do. And there's silly things that coulda, shoulda, woulda, right. But we took risks. And then I would say sometimes we didn't have to take risks because we were just allowed to be different and innovative, and to be trained like that is unreal.
What an incredible experience for you. And I think about the comment that you made that someone had said to you that you didn't have any talent, and that you were able to use that as fuel to push yourself forward, to be able to prove to not only yourself, but to others that, oh, yes, I do. And wait till you see what I'm capable of doing. And then I think about others who in a similar situation, who may have heard something like that, whether it was from a family member or some point in their youth, and how that would impact them and how that would keep them small. And if you believe something like that without having the truth behind it, right, without having role models and mentors and others who can coach you along and that can show you that you are an amazing talent. Let's hone that skill and help develop you along. It's sad. It truly is when I come across others who have those, whether it's limiting beliefs or self-doubt or that self-talk that's negative, that they're not quite sure how to process that or have the tools to be able to move forward. And thank goodness that you were able to use that as fuel as opposed to use it to really derail yourself.
Oh yeah. Well, I thought, well, then if I don't have talent, great, I'll go get paid for not having talent. Like, I don't care if you think I really don't care what you think. If you let me in and we get to do this together, however you think of me is one thing, but if you give me access, if I can be, like, I just thought that was, what a wonderful way. And also I want to, so I grew up, I'm the oldest of four growing up in a house of Al-Anon and Alateen. So I grew up very young, knowing that adults didn't always have all of the answers, and that people were capable of lying without knowing it, and we were all sort of human. And I grew up knowing that, but between my junior and senior year, I took a class at the Landmark Forum. Do you know it? The Landmark Forum?
Heard of it, but I'm not familiar with it.
And in it, I learned this idea that, the stories we tell ourselves are unlike any other horrible story that will never get repeated. The way we control our memory, and how a memory we think is, solid fact, but scientifically proven is not, because of how the brain works. And I was never taught that until that year. And maybe that was the weekend that made me say, now I need to have my casting company. Now I'm ready to change my reality, because I want to change my reality. So if I want to be a casting director, I have to have a casting company, because I wasn't okay saying, okay, how people are like, just change your mind and talk in the future and claim it. And I'm like, no, that's lying. That's cheating and weird. And so that was my action. That's all. And I disagree with that. No, I don't think that's lying and cheating. And I understand why I hold myself to a level of honesty that, is just not, but actually I love it. I love it because it keeps me authentic, and especially where I jump from so many different circles and projects. I just get to be me all the time. It's been fun up until podcasting and all these Zooms and video things that we did. It's been fun off camera. It's hard. This is work, but I love that I get to do it. And I thought, if I'm going to do it, I want to surround myself with the best. So like just putting out the energy and even getting invites, from you is like, it's people I haven't met yet that I now know I need in my life. It's the coolest gift.
It is a totally cool gift. And I'm a believer in that we attract what we put out, and we attract the right people into our lives at the right time. Now, we may not know at that moment why, right? Why is that person in my circle or my circle of influence? And sometimes it's not until later that begins to unfold itself, and we realize that. Then we have that aha moment. Oh, okay, I get it, right? And I want to touch on another point that you made, and I want to keep the conversation fluid here, but you're bringing up some great things. And to kind of center it, you brought up the word ego when you were talking about some of the professionals that you work with. And I want to touch on that for a moment, because we all have an ego, obviously, and we run into that. We run into our egos on both a positive side and a dark side in both our professional lives and our personal lives. And I'm curious, from your perspective and your experience in working with lots of different people, how does ego play a role? And how do you see ego getting in someone's way, or being able to use ego as a way to fuel the fire and accomplish great things?
Yeah, I think some of the answer is perspective. Like I'm drawn to say ego is an asset in ensemble show. No, ego can, think about this for a second now. Because ego in a solo show, if you are the host of a show, if you have a unique practice that, you're a doctor or a matchmaker or something like that, that's driving your business, and it's a single person vehicle show. Ego has driven you to the point to create a business that the show can ultimately really focus on. So it may be called Millionaire Matchmaker, and it may be about Patty Stanger finding, love for millionaires, but it really is a show about matchmaking. And so ego fits that show wonderfully because it feeds the larger purpose, which is matchmaking. Where in the earlier days of when I would cast the Housewives and some of the earlier Bravo stuff, where people were just looking for their 5 minutes of fame, they would show up. It's almost like a beautiful front door, and you open up the front door, and sometimes it's an empty house, and you're like, wait, what? That's bad ego. That's I present well, but I have no meaning behind why I'm here, other than the fact that my ego is hungry. And success for me is I'm happy. That's where ego works against you, especially nowadays in TV, where ego is fruitful is when it pushes you. But when ego is the only thing that's motivating you, i.e. there's no greater purpose. And they'll ask, like, what do I look for if I'm trying to cast I've cast Laguna Beach that turned into The Hills and the city. And like, there's lots of shows that have like longevity. And there's a difference between someone who loves to talk and someone who loves to do. You see it. It's evident in the conversations. It's evident in the conversation from the morning conversation to the afternoon conversation, right? Like if you're talking to someone at 7 a.m. and they're saying, I'm going to do XYZ. And then later at the end of the day, they're still going to do XYZ and they haven't done it yet. They're just, there could be a little performative piece in there where they enjoy saying this. They get pleasure by wanting to do or wanting to be in the right place. And that's expensive. That leads to the FBI knocking on your door. That because you're spending money that's not yours, because your MO isn't to help people. You're trying to make, that's where you can really, it's detrimental, not that it could hurt you, but it's detrimental to your well-being, right? It's not, ego isn't just going to hurt your presence on television or tarnish your relationship. It's going to have but that's the reality of media now, and that's because of the speed of media that we're processing it. So we're forced to make decisions, I think, quicker. So I think even though, thank God, R. Kelly finally, what's been coming to R. Kelly finally came to him, even though that documentary came out, years ago, and it speaks to the process of it. But media is having a real impact, and the speed of internet and streaming, and that hopefully will, that does speed up our reaction to, in our perception of media. People try to be heroes. They try to be, of the moment without knowing fully, what they're stepping into. And again, that's another example of where ego can, be detrimental to the character of your brand and your personality. Absolutely.
In cases like that, I look for consistency of message. Mm-hmm. So, I look back over someone's, whether it's their social profile, or if it's a business that I'm working with or a business that I'm interested in learning from, I look at the messaging that they put out, how they show up on a consistent basis, and not just 1 week or 2 weeks. I'm looking for trends, mm-hmm. because if someone is always showing up, let's say someone who does good, who lives with a greater purpose, who's contributing to their community and contributing to the greater good, if all they do is talk about it, but we don't see the action behind it, if we don't see that consistently they're showing up that way and they're doing the things that back up the words that they're sharing, then that's a problem for me, right? That's a red flag. Yeah. It should be a problem for anyone. So I love the ability today to be able to go back and look for consistent patterns of how someone is showing up to the world.
Yeah. And ultimately, I think that the platforms realize that way earlier than I did, because I used to hate consistency. I used to hate that all you have to do is just show up, and then, but there's a exactly for the reason that you just said, and also for the same reason that the Kardashians are the giants that they're at, the housewives. It's consistency. These women have not been off air in over a decade. So there is magic to the consistent, but the platforms know it, and we learned it in TV. Sometimes the decision was made, no one watched the season, so why are we extending it? Because if we do one more season, then we'll have 3 seasons, and that's enough that a lot of people could have seen it, and then maybe it'll finally click. And I've seen it work, just because it needs to stay on long enough to find its audience, especially, again, with the speed of how we consume content. Even this, I hope no one's listening to this podcast 1.5x. Like the speed, even that, like the speed, I sound real good, like my normal voice. Like the Vinnie Chipmunk sound is not so cute.
Yeah, same with me. I hear you on that. I feel you.
Although you would be like a bass Theodore. You would be like Theodore would have like a nice low voice if there was a chipmunk with. I like that.
I need to have an avatar created around that one. Thank you. Thank you. That's my personal branding. I appreciate that tip. So I'm curious with all the individuals that you've worked with and those that you coach today and that you help create incredible personal branding and help them develop their careers and their businesses, what are some of the characteristics that you can point to that seem to form a common thread amongst those that are more successful, those that are highly dedicated to their craft? What are some of those characteristics?
I think being a quick decision maker is one of them, and not being afraid to make a quick decision and standing by it. Now, it's also okay to change your mind, but the decision has been made, and it came too judiciously, and there was action sort of made. I think that decision makers in conversation, and you can really sense if someone, again, like we were saying, is just talking to fill the space, or if they're evaluating sort of which way to move. I think that people who have someplace to go, people who don't have the time to stick around and be on camera all day, and we're lucky to get a glimpse of their time because there's something that's happening off camera that needs to be the tip of the iceberg sort of needs to be captured on camera. And I think we're at the point now where a lot of the experts, so maybe 5 years ago in television, experts were everywhere. And maybe 2 years ago, experts were then elevated to entrepreneurs. Now it might even be like founder-led, owner, or so the idea even just in like hard news media and morning show media is that these people were invested in their concept, their product, their services. People who get their hands dirty, oh, for sure. Yeah. When I would cast Housewives of New Jersey and I would go to someone's house and I would see that the kitchen wasn't even used, and I'm suspicious. But then they're like, but wait, here's the other kitchen with the shit. And I'm like, oh, this is some like, okay, Bravo's gonna like this. And you can see like the manigot still on, like they really were, it was a real authentic cook that happened there. So you learn to figure out how people show up for themselves, to be honest. And if they don't show up for themselves, they're not showing up for other people, and there tends to be a little bit of an ego flag in that too. I think quick decision makers, I think people who want to work hard, get their hands dirty, people who want to win awards. And I'll leave it at that too. People who want to not only create something, but believe in it so much that it should be exalted. And so much so that there should be a team of people that should share in that awesomeness. And that people, those persons, whoever that is, that, drive that conversation. And I stand up for them and I give them kudos, because who doesn't want to work with an award-winning screenwriter, an award-winning host, and there are too many people out there that don't even know how, so like, for example, how you win awards is you have to apply for them. And to apply for them, you have to pay an application fee. That's no different than the Academy Awards, the Grammys, the Emmys, the Tony. You pay, by the way, in the Academy, I have to pay to be in the Academy, and then I pay my application fee for the project, and then I pay for every single person, additional head that I want, to win and go up on stage with me and share in that moment too. So it's an expensive process, and I can see why some people stay away from it. But no one's going out giving away awards for free. That's not how the Academy. That's not how Academy Award. The Academy Award, if you don't know, then if you're an actor, you hire. There are publicists who specialize in award campaigns because of the B2B nature of talent marketing. And winning awards is so important in the talent and celebrity world because it drives box office, because it drives viewership, it drives conversations, it drives eyeballs to the project. And when I see people, I don't know why I just went on this rant, but when I see people who are creating, but they're not asking for awards, and there are free awards. There are free awards. In fact, I didn't think I was going to say this, but if I can, sure. And if anyone who's listening to this, I have a document that I just finished creating. There's maybe over 70 digital awards, from creator awards, marketing awards, the stackies, if you have a unique stack of websites and services that you use to accomplish your goals. So I took some time to make sure I can carve out the hard to find awards too, because just not enough talented people are connected to those awards. There are enough talented people, but I just want to make sure that they know where those awards are. So if that document is helpful to you, please like DM me. I guess I could say like I'm Vinnie Potestivo on all the social media networks, and just DM me and talk to me about this document that I have. And I would love to share it with you, because and that's why I created it, so that I can share it with you. So please let me, please help me share it with you. So
Absolutely. That is really interesting. And obviously we'll make sure that we link to that in the show notes and specifically call that out. I appreciate the fact as you were talking about, let's say, awards or award ceremonies, what have you, that there's a focus on recognizing the team, right? Recognizing those around you who helped you get to where you are today, because we know that no one does this alone. And for someone to stand up on a stage or stand up at a business event and not recognize all of the amazing people who poured into them throughout their careers or on a particular project that allowed them to reach the pinnacle of where they are today, I think it sends a very strong signal, and it tells you a lot about that person.
Yeah, I was going to say clearly you're young and they just don't realize the impact that the coolest part about the entertainment industry is that, and I think that movie was it La La Land? Is that the name of that? Was that like with Ryan and they're singing and dancing?
All the dancing. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And the idea that you go to LA to be famous and then some people make it and don't, and you understand the journey of how awkward that is. And the show people relationship that's my favorite part about show business is the show people. We have a very unique skill set. We have many different hats because we're put in many different situations, but we're still doing the same thing. And I found that I've probably been in my media universe for 20 plus years, the same 5,000, 7,000 people that I've worked with on shows, producers, directors, casting, or from any variety of it. And I don't feel like there are very many new people that I've worked with in TV that I haven't worked with, in the last 20 years. And it's a really, really tight supportive community. And that's kind of like going to school and being in high school for 20 years. Imagine, now we're old enough where we don't ask about ex-boyfriends because you're married. So, we there's a respect limit, but up until that point, we used to talk about it. And that's sort of and I'm only 20, I'm 44 now. And I've been active in the media industry since I was 20. And it's so cool that I was so young when I started, and I feel like I'm sort of in the middle of my career where I've been able to really learn now what I thought I knew 20 years ago, which is, how important our relationships are, the promise of collaboration, leading with value. I didn't even know that's what I was doing, but I would say to people, can I help you? And then I would say, because I was like, don't tell me how to help you. Let me tell you how I would like to help you. That was my idea. So I said, I'll ask you for help and I'll give you 3 ways that maybe you might want me to help you. And I'll make them fun and interesting because I only want to do fun and interesting things with you. And that's how I know I could work and grow, and it's just cool. It's just super cool that people give you the space and the grace to be creative if you show up with these tools and these skills and say, the promise is there. Let's adapt our goal. Let's create a goal instead of just coming into it with those preconceived notions.
And we can learn those skills and acquire those tools at any time. And I think that you just hit on some of the most vital tools for success in our personal and professional lives. And it's building your community, right? Building the relationships, building rapport, always looking for a way to serve, looking for a way to give, as opposed to always asking for, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? Can you connect me with this person? This is about showing up and giving to others. Clearly, throughout your career, you've learned up to this point, you've learned some incredibly valuable lessons. And the fact that you have relationships and that you've worked with the number of people that you just mentioned that you work with, who you still communicate with, says a lot about you as an individual. And I think that it's super important for us to recognize and to remember that we're always being watched, whether we think so or not. It's our actions that speak volumes, right? So when you are looking for ways to offer 3 ways that you can help someone, or providing a solution to a problem that they have, and you offer it, right? You just give of yourself. People are looking, they're watching that, right? Because that's all about you and your character. And when you're around someone like that, it's attractive. You want to be around someone like that. And I think that's an incredibly valuable lesson for all of us to learn. So for those that are watching and listening right now, who may be, let's say, relatively new to the business space, they're newer entrepreneurs, they're just starting up a business, make sure you're listening to this. Build your network early. Always look for ways to serve others. Don't always go out there pushing your product or service. Look for ways to create solutions for others first, build that value, and always look for a way to serve.
Yeah, and the network part is such an important piece to it. I know that as we speak, LinkedIn is rolling out a brand new feature called newsletter, and that will allow people to do ultimately what we were doing with our direct newsletters, on MailChimp for the last 20, 30 years, whatever. Now in Linkbox native system, in the LinkedIn inbox, which if you're unemployed is a pretty valuable location for you to be checking, all day. So the idea of finding these new technologies that are ways to positively disrupt our day. And I'm not asking you to stop the music. I'm just asking you to play. I'm just adding drums, just a little bit of snare. That's all. Just one more element, to the mix here. Yeah, exactly. And that's the piece that's where we're at now. And technology helps that, and creatives help that. And creative, so people who aren't told they're creative, lawyers, doctors, dentists, maybe, for example, it's rude to call them not creative, but from an artistically creative, traditionally, like how theatrically creative thing. But that word creativity has changed. And even then, it's making me cringe because I'm kind of setting it up in the worst way possible, because I don't agree with what I just said. It's like the pronouns matter so much in creativity, because it's more than a muscle. It's more than an innate skill. It gives you it allows you, being identified as a creative allows you, and sometimes, to be creative. And if you're traditionally if you have no clue what I'm talking about, or maybe you do, and you're saying, yeah, I'm an accountant, but here I am on Instagram, and I need to make stories, and I need to make reels, and I need to make, that's the creative that I'm talking about. Like, that's the person who might not identify, they might not know that what they're doing is creativity and creative. But you know what? If they went to the gym, they would know they were being an athlete. If you ran a race, you were being a runner. And I think the creativity piece is interesting because people don't yet realize that they're creative. So they're not yet used to tuning and fine-tuning those creative muscles, memory, consistency, creating, consuming. Input. You have to be ingesting content to be outputting. You have to be inspired, So all those people who have no clue what I'm talking about, and I'm talking to you for sure, it's okay to not know that you're creative. It's okay to feel like you are a bit of a Bob Ross without maybe identifying as a painter. And if anything, I kind of love what Bob did. It was like, focus on the joy of painting. Like he showed people how almost anyone could. Now, I was that guy. I couldn't, back, you had to draw. It was like, draw a turtle and you can go to art school. Like, that was the commercial on TV. If you can draw a rabbit or a turtle, you can go to art school. And I was like, Well, I'm gonna wait for the TD VCR repair commercial to come up, and maybe that's what I'll do when I grow up. So I just said it's a real pain point. What's that?
I get you on that. I'm here drawing happy trees. Happy
Happy trees, happy little trees,
Yeah.
little
Absolutely.
fluffy clouds.
Lovely
Yeah,
clouds.
it resonates with me though, because I was told once that, maybe I wasn't traditionally what's quote unquote talented. And for the people who weren't told those bad ideas, who weren't even told that you are creative, like that's what I want to tell you. That's the message that I'm trying to get at point.
Yeah.
Is that you are creative. We all are now, whether you like it or not. Actually, I'll even go that far. You're creative. Haha. Now
That's
you're
right.
just like us. Now you make shows and books and posters and art. And now you're an artist. Well, I think there's a real chemistry and finesse to being an artist, but I'll take the general term of artist, and I will extend that to anyone who has an iPhone with a finger that swipes in a very specific, beautiful way when they're creating art or finger painting on, there's the artist in that. And I'm excited about what technology is finally doing for all of us in terms of enhancing our creativity.
As am I. So I want to talk about your business for a moment, and so two questions for you. One would be who your ideal client is. So those that are listening and watching right now, what type of client is attracted to what you do? And then the second piece to that question is, what problems do you solve for others? What is the solution that you provide, and why you?
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. I would say the two types of clients that I resonate well with are founder-led business owners. So people who've created a business and are still actively in charge and at the front of it. I do really well with the celebrity-facing brand. So founder-led businesses, those are QVC brands, Sephora brands, Ulta, Blue Mercury. Some of my clients in that category, Peter Thomas Roth is a great example. A mogul, a killer in the skincare space, but just wasn't touching digital. What I was able to do is give him the tools and skills. I actually went in and I helped some of my clients that are traditionally non-creative, like he's a skincare company, so he doesn't have Instagram editors working. He didn't have then, but he does now, or a booth where you can sort of shoot that. Founder-led business owners for sure. And I would say the other part is an expert or someone who identifies with a way to communicate a message to a larger group of people. I'm really good at media. I'm really strong with taking media and turning it into content, meaning coming up with pillar media that is a 30-minute show on Fox, on DirecTV. I'm really good at amplifying distribution and getting content out there if I'm part of the development process, because I'm mindful in development of the tricks to establish earned reach and to make sure that storylines and story engines are diverse and like everything is sort of like as attractive as possible to the platform. And I think that the problem that I help people, or hope that I do, is I hope that I help them be more strategic communicators between media and content, and that in between space of social media and the DMs and the bots, and then on TV and news and magazines and weekly and of the moment culture. And by helping them understand what their messaging is and how they're going to record it and produce it, I'm then able to help them amplify and distribute it in really, really unique ways that I know are attractive to certain platforms, because a lot of those platform people all came from cable TV. Actually, a lot of old MTV people are running these cable places, these digital places. So
interesting.
It's those cable people, those innovators 20 years ago that are at Spotify. Liz Gately is the woman who brought Joe Rogan to Spotify and the Obamas to Spotify. Liz Gately is the woman I helped her cast Laguna Beach. And when I left MTV, she did The Jersey Shore and a bunch of other shows, on MTV too. So all that's where all the TV people sort of went. And I didn't want to be a network, and I didn't want to be an incubator program. I didn't want to solely focus on launching, brands. And I'm good at taking TV stars and movie stars and turning them into media moguls. It's a weird thing to say, but like we saw it with Ashton Kutcher. He didn't want a TV show. The last thing he needed was a host punked, a hidden camera show, an unscripted show on TV. He's in movies, he's in the number one show on a sitcom, that's on TV at that point. He wanted a production company. He wanted to be a media mogul. He wanted a hit series, and he 1,000% knew that if he was part of something on MTV, especially the year that he was that punk launch, especially that timing of it all, because of the movies he was in and where pop culture was, he knew that the audience would show up. So he originally wasn't going to be in punk at all. But when he realized what that would do, and when I say he realized, that means like he did it, and then we focus group it, and then we get answers. Then he's like, "Oh yeah, I was right. Yeah, that's exactly what I. Now I got." So he didn't want. Jessica Simpson wanted it. Jessica Simpson called MTV. She said, "I'm getting married. I need a redo. This is my redo. This is how people will stop comparing me to Britney and stop comparing me to Christina Aguilera and some of the younger female singers that were out there, or just." And this is indicative of the media back then, but just how the media loves to compare females to females. And there's that, narrative in news. It's toxic.
It's a dangerous trap.
What we were able to do was put Jess and Nick, Nick Lachey and Jessica Simpson into a bubble where they trusted us. Now, MTV owned the show. We own the rights. We have final say in edit, but there's a lot of trust, imagine. Well, I don't know if Ozzy trusted us. Sharon trusted us. Ozzy was down for the ride, I think, whatever. But I'll tell you what, Jack and Kelly, they were always suspicious. They always had one eye on me at any given moment. But they wanted it, right? Like they wanted the media to be in media because they had an MO, right? It wasn't about follow my family. Sharon knew she wanted to be a talk show host. She knew that was her way. How else would, and also I want to point out, in 2004, 2005, 2003, if you had an English accent in America, like you were suddenly instantly credible. It was like the weirdest inference but like, oh, he has an accent. So like, he seems just kind of trustworthy because the weirdest thing that happened. And I saw it happen. I saw it because
that's a lot to put on an accent.
Yeah, right. I'm like, what do you mean he's got an accent? Well, we don't respect them. What do you mean? What are you talking about? I'm like, not that accent. No, quite proper actually. But interesting. But a fun time and I'm so grateful to have had that journey early with Ashton and Jessica Simpson and some of these people that are just Mandy Moore, Beyonce, people who are just killing it now, who are way bigger than we were back then in the moments when I worked with them, and I just think that for me is like the biggest reward and the biggest return on investment. And when I saw that as my favorite part of my career, is their success still, that's when I realized I needed to be in podcasting, and I wanted to have more of my narrative around me because I was very appreciative of what I was getting, but I was also getting what was coming to me. I wasn't asking for anything. And my podcast is the first time where I'm literally asking for something. Even in casting, I would never ask for anything in casting. I would always tell people, I got this show. That's what I'm doing. Oh, and they would ask me all these questions because they're curious, but I'm not trying to. Imagine how annoying that would be if I called everyone. Oh, I'm looking for a matchmaker for the next Bravo show. Do you happen to have a male who's, like, people would stop taking my phone calls.
Sure. Well, you opened up the door that I wanted to walk through, and that is around your podcast, which you recently launched. And it's I Have a Podcast, an appropriate name. And I'm curious what that experience has been like up to this point. I know you've got a number of shows that are already recorded and banked, but what's been the experience like? What have you learned up to this point in the time that you've been podcasting?
Oh yeah, it was painful, horrible, painful, worthy. And it's going to the gym after not going to the gym for years. It stinks. by the way. Consistency sucks. Muscles are sore. Am I good at this? Am I going to get the results that I want to get? Is it really worth my time? Am I getting enough growth day to day? Is this really going to, am I really going to get what I want? You know, sometimes people go to the gym because they want to like fall in love. And I'm like, don't go to the gym to fall in love. Like just fall in love to fall in love. Then go to the gym. And like, you don't have to go to the gym to fall in love. There's other ways to sort of fall in love. I got it terribly bad in my head. I'm looking at the palm of my hand right now. I would look into the Zoom camera, and in the beginning of the pandemic, my palms would get so sweaty. It felt like I was like in a hot tub all day long, and they're pruny and it hurt. And my nerves were in such high overdrive that I'm putting ring lights in front of me, microphones in front of me, all these things that I felt very comfortable not being in front of, that I felt very comfortable being behind of for 20 years. And also that I kept telling myself that that was my comfort zone too. Oh, well, you know, Vinnie, when you interview people for casting tapes, what I do is I remove my voice from the casting tape, and then the network, the Andy Cohen just watches the housewife talk with her husband walking through the house. They don't hear me asking questions, you know, they want to know, you know, so I have to give them that experience. And I learned to remove myself from it. I realized that I didn't like showing up and having to prove that I knew something. So I didn't like the idea of coming up with talk points or questions that I had to nail so I can get some type of value in the episode. It felt too performative. And I'm taking a page out of Ashton Kutcher's book. I didn't want to be seen as an interviewer. Not that anything's wrong with it, by the way. But I'm just, that's maybe a moderator or a collaborator, but how do I get that, you know, through? And here's what I landed on. I'm comfortable talking to people on Zoom. I'm comfortable pretending like no one else in the world is going to hear this. I'm comfortable committing to the time that we allot for our conversation, and I don't get distracted, and I'm hyper focused on it because I truly believe that this is what I'm meant to be talking about. This is the most important use and way I could be using my time and use of my time for the day. I've already decided that piece.
Love that.
So I thought to myself, okay, here's what I'll do. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to call up all my old friends that I've helped in their career and they've helped me in mine. Mandy Moore. I have asks out to Diane von Furstenberg, Beyonce, Ashton Kutcher, Wilmer Valderrama, Carmen Electra, anyone that I've ever worked with. I currently have asked on about 30 episodes that are in the can. All of them were recorded on Zencaster, where I just got to catch up with my friends, because I know that all the people who are watching my podcast really care more about them at this point than me, which if that's not true, then don't tell me otherwise, because that's like the fact that I'm going with. I love editing. So I also didn't want to have a podcast that was nailed perfectly, and then I didn't get to edit it. I actually like the process of editing, but I'm not an editor. So I had to hire an editor, and I hired a video editor, and I hired an audio editor, and I hired a producer to help me come up with notes between the audio edits and the video edits. And while I was on Clubhouse, I ran into my friend Melinda, who was the music supervisor on Osborne's. And I said, well, I have to have a music supervisor on my podcast, even though I'm literally a beginning podcast. But like, if I'm going to pretend like if I'm going to Andy Cohen myself a show and give myself a show, I want to work with my crew. I'm not going to take this on by myself. And it's an investment. But what allowed me to pay that investment is my clients also paying me to do the very same thing that I did for myself. So I now found myself comfortable paying other people to do that for me. And in the process, I grew my company, I grew my crew. I was able to take on more than I thought I was able to take on. And because of that, I've assigned 2 new one-on-one clients in the last 4 weeks, from creating my content, from explaining to people what's in my head. And I'm not to say that I'm unique, but we're all unique. And I think it's super cool that in my uniqueness, people trust the discovery of inner creativity, that they'll look into their craft and let me ask them questions about, oh, why did you take that? Why did you leave the network? Wasn't it too early? Why did you take this movie? Wasn't it? How come you're not recording? Like you like 6 number ones. How come you're not recording? Ashley Simpson, record more music. Ashley Simpson, if you're listening, please. Thank you. She's recording, actually. I know.
Good.
But it's that conversation that I was missing. I'm not a manager, like a talent manager, and I don't work at a network anymore, and I won't work at a network anymore. So where else do I get to give my 2 cents and be creative in a development capacity without having to sell a project? Other than on my podcast, I have a podcast. And also, I brought it up earlier, I did grow up in Al-Anon and Alateen. There definitely is a hi, my name is Vinnie, and I have a podcast component to identifying as a podcaster. Like, I want to identify as a storyteller. I want to identify as a podcaster, not just as a TV producer, not just as an executive producer who's worked on TV. There's a different skill set that it takes to be a podcaster and a storyteller. And that ultimately is how I landed on it. And everyone always starts it off. They send me these emails. Hey, Vin, I have a podcast. And I'm like, that would be what my podcast would be named, I thought. And now it is.
I think it's brilliant. It really is brilliant. And I love the fact that you are continuing to discover other talents and other areas that you want to cultivate and continue to grow, because it all really ties back to personal branding. It ties back to being able to look at other ways that you can serve with your skill sets and your talents and the community that you built, right? Mm-hmm. So continue to be able to amplify their message, bring them on, highlight them, be able to share what's going on in their world and pull out the tangible pieces that are meaningful that your listeners are actually going to get something from, right? So I think that's incredibly powerful. And it just shows that you're just like everyone else. We're multidimensional. We have to spend time looking for those areas, right, that serve our greater purpose, look for ways that we can continue to develop ourselves and not be afraid to try, get over whether it's ego, get over the negative self-talk, just get out there and do it. And that's what ask. Get over the ask.
Get to the gaps.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And I also appreciate the fact that you reached out and have built a team around you to handle different aspects, right? Because one of the most challenging things at times, if you're someone who is, you do things, right? You take action, you're a go-getter, is letting go. It's letting go of some of those areas when we may think that, well, I'm the only one who can do that, right? Or who can do it efficiently. But if you truly want to grow, you know that you have to be able to let those things go and trust in others. And it sounds like that's what you're doing.
And yourself too, right? So because if you don't trust in yourself, how could other people trust in you? And, I think 2 years ago, maybe even people would work for you if they didn't trust you just because they wanted the money and it was like a very but that is not the case now in this creative world that we live in, meaning like there's a lot of independent creatives, people who used to collaborate, people who used to edit now are editors and producers, and they're no longer offering editing services. So it's a really unique dynamic way that people work. And I was never one of those employers who hired people based on like the best thing you did on your resume, because this is so me what I'm about to say, but I know you didn't do it yet. Because like, how could you have done your best work if we haven't met each other? And I truly believe, like, I believe that, like, I really believe that I can help people because I do it. I'm impressed by the people I work with because of what they're able to even pull out of me. And also I want to land on one more thing, collaborating and showing up in value. Sometimes I show up and I say, hey, I have no clue why I'm calling you. I don't know why I beg you to let me know when you're in New York all the time. I don't know why you have to just stay here. What's up? How you doing? I love seeing you be successful. Just keep me in the loop. And I have newsletters, and I hardly ever unsubscribe to the newsletters because of that. But you brought up this one moment earlier in the conversation where it's like we make these relationships for a purpose and we don't know. When they come to resolve. And like the first week I worked at MTV, I met this athlete, TJ Lavin, who's a BMX rider. And when it was my turn to cast the host for MTV's The Challenge 20 years ago, this athlete walked into my office. We had a 3-year relationship. He's from Vegas. I'm from New York. I'm like Vinny from New York. TJ, when you come to New York, we're going to go to this club and blah, blah, And he's like, dude, I'm from here. Like, everything's cool. I'm in Vegas. I'm riding bikes and we're getting gnarly and we're getting beat up. And he comes into my office and he's like, he says he saw all my rainbow flags. And he's like, he says, Vin, are you gay? And it made me laugh. I never will forget that moment because it caught me off guard. And there's like questions you're not supposed to ask in corporate environments. And I thought to myself, I said to wow, this is the reason why, because I want an ally. I want a straight ally who I am not intimidated by. I believe you will fight for my rights. At that point, there was no gay marriage. Adoption was not. I believed that he would be the ally on a show for MTV that's all about pushing boundaries mentally and physically. And I thought, if I can put an ally in that spot, and he was not the best host. There was someone else that the network wanted. The network wanted TJ. We wanted TJ. The production company wanted someone different because he was a stronger host. But TJ grew into it. They gave him the space to do it. And the dude's been at that job for 20 years. He's like 30 something seasons. So it's like so
incredible.
Cool that happened.
But it all came back around.
It all comes back around.
Yeah, absolutely. You made the
sometimes
connection.
Sometimes you don't know why, right? Sometimes you don't know why, so it's okay to not, it's okay to say, hey, I don't have an idea, but together we might do it. And I'm not going to waste your time. I'll give you 5 ideas that will help you doing whatever you're doing. And then maybe after I exhaust you, if there's a way for us to work together and focus on 1 or 2 of the small things left over on the table, like, let's start there and then see where that goes. And I'm into it. I like that.
That's where the juice of life comes from, when you can collaborate like that and create something that's incredible, right? With people that you enjoy working with. It's an amazing feeling.
Look at all the spin-offs on the networks I've worked on. Bravo, MTV. Look at all the Jackass shows that were spun off from that show, and all the and Wild 'N Out, and how many shows have been and talent have been launched from that too. So it's just I don't know, super lucky to have been at MTV, right place, right time. But like that's my family. Those people who are entertaining us through the pandemic on Netflix, on NBC, on CBS. I just had Vanessa Lachey. She just became the first female lead in an NCIS ever. That's so huge.
Wow.
That an MTV VJ, someone you rushed home to watch at 4:00 to see your top 10 is literally a female lead in a CBS. I mean, that's just like so cool that I'm in this industry long enough to see that happen. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
I think it's so great that you're able to celebrate those wins with those individuals that you've been able to help along and at least be part of their journey. That's a big deal. So I think this is a great point for us to wrap up. There are so many other areas that I would love to go in with you, and you have shared so much, which I'm greatly appreciative for. And before I ask my final question to you, please share with us where we can go to connect, where we can consume your content, listen to your podcast.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I have a podcast.com is where you can find the podcast. My website is vpe.tv. Also, if you want to watch us on YouTube or youtube.com/VPETV. And we actually have a 30-minute half-hour broadcast show coming out on Bespoke TV, Direct TV, Cox, Comcast, and a couple of OTT networks in about a month. So there will be more ways to be able to consume I Have a Podcast than there are right now. But that's a good starting place for sure. And that's where you can find some information on I have a media mastermind that's coming up in November that I'm excited about. And that's it. I was going to say one-on-one stuff, but let's hold off the one-on-ones till next year. If you'd like help priming to get to 2022, I'm your guy. I'm a little bit at capacity only because I'm literally rejiggering my infrastructure and figuring out how to pull the best out of the talent that I'm working with now with the clients that I now have. And I'm just so excited about what this podcast has brought. Everyone said, this is the way to do it. This is, you have no clue what that return on energy feels like until you've put out a podcast with a couple of friends and you start getting anonymous feedback.
It's amazing. Isn't it
fun.
amazing? Oh, I feel you on that. So here is my final question to you. So what are the top 1 to 2 lessons that you've learned from failure that have had the greatest impact on your life?
Sure. So the first thing I want to say is it's in that failure is that kind of like how you continue to fix the mistake, to be honest. Like when I look at failure, I look at it as like an incomplete project that just sort of like needs to get to the not failure piece to it. And I feel like in my projects, I feel like there's always just enough time to turn perception and there's always something. So I think that that's one of the things I would do. I also, we build in postmortems as creatives. We build in postmortems to our creative endeavor. We say something is going to go wrong. Prepare to talk about it on Thursday. Meanwhile, good luck tonight. Have fun on the live show. But tomorrow we'll talk about everything that went wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong, right? It's live TV, So that was one thing that I'm so appreciative that I learned, was just like preparing, carving out the space so that you didn't have to address the bigger issues, but you could address the smaller issues too before they become the bigger issues. I think having a technical skill set also is one of the things that helped me get out of failure. I know how to edit, change a storyline, tweak a story engine, change the vibe of a scene with music, think of a better call to action, tweak the title, come up with a better meta tech. Like there's a technical piece to how content is consumed. And that's sort of like, think of it as the theater. I like to control that piece, the presenting piece, how you embrace and receive that content. And those technical skills can help you get out of murky situations. So having technical skills, knowing, I'm a hotkey guy, like, I'm command comma will get you to your settings on Zoom. Command, like I learned, Shift F7 is thesaurus back in the day when I was writing papers and I had to look for longer words to fill up the lines. But I think that it's silly to say that about Shift F7, but that's actually the earliest. Now I'm thinking that's me being resourceful, knowing what my limits are and knowing how to tap into knowing where to go when I'm looking for, something that needs to help me get to the cross line. And that's a technical answer to a creative issue that I had. So, and technical skills will get you through. Technical skills will keep you hired when those firing waves come through the, you have strong, if you're meaning technical skills, meaning if you just know how to plug in a VCR, if you know how to properly get your phone to connect to Wi-Fi, like there are some basic skills that are rudimentary that will save your moments, save you in those awkward moments, let alone
so true,
the bigger ones. Yeah.
So true. Thank you for sharing. And
you rock.
Vinnie, thank you so very much for spending time with us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, getting to know you, and I truly look forward to seeing where this relationship can continue to grow. You've given back to our community. You've shared of your knowledge, and thank you so very much.
You're awesome. Your energy is contagious, and I cannot wait to see you in less than a month.
I am so looking forward to it. And for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and listening. And please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. 1 or 2 comments sharing what resonated most in this episode would go a long way. And to enjoy more episodes and to learn how J. Shear Business Consulting can help build a solid foundation for your service-based business, remember, all you need to do is visit jshearbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning and growing. Subscribe and listen to I Have a Podcast, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care.
J. Shear.
J. Shear. Business Consultant.
J. Shear Business Consulting.